Welcome back to the Radical Dreamers. We are going to be doing the last ending today. There is some additional bonus stuff, just so you know, that I'm not going to be covering because I don't care that much. So just a heads up, this is the last ending. There is another episode coming after this for some extra stuff, but it's not really related directly to this particular game. All right, well, for the last ending here, we want to go, and before I knew it, I was asleep. Serge, oi Serge, I'm talking to you. My head jerked upward as I snapped back to consciousness. Idiot that I was, I'd managed to drift off. As I came back to my senses, I looked up to see the hulking shadow of Lynx's manor looming over us. Wakey wakey, sleepyhead, we've got work to do. Her words had hardly reached me before she jumped onto the terrace and disappeared within. Ack, wait up, kid. Flustered, I rushed after her. All right, so once we get into the terrace, this is the part where you can start to do the ghost ending if you want to go ahead and do that one. But I'm just going to go ahead and bypass most of this because we don't really care. And we're going to follow after Kid as always. Oi, Serge, you better not be sleeping on the job. We'll leave you for the guards to find. Kid and Magil were already far down the passageway. How long had I been standing there? All right, let's go ahead and rush after them. The corridor stretched off to the left and right. From the terrace, it seemed equally dark and chilly in both directions. So we went to go left down the corridor to start with. We took the corridor leading from the left-hand side of the terrace, eventually arriving at an intersection with some stairs. Okay, so we have the stairs, we have a main corridor, and we have a side passage, and we want to go to the side passage because we're going to the study. We headed down the side passage. At the end of it, we came to an old, immaculately polished door. I'm going to go ahead and head inside. Kid gently pushed the door ajar and peeked into the room. The next thing I knew, she'd slipped inside. Magil and I followed. Looks like a study. The room was lit by moonlight coming through the long, slender windows, slanting down in pale beams through the darkness. It was pretty big for a study, with an immaculate antique desk dominating the center. There were rows of bookshelves lined with thick, dusty old tomes. The wall to the rear of the room was decorated with paintings, and shelves of vases and painted plates stood before it. They all seemed to be curios from foreign lands. If you want to get the romance ending with Magil, you want to go for the desk. If you want to do the robot one, you want to go for the paintings, but we're going to check the bookshelves this time. I walked over to a bookshelf and examined the spines of the neatly arranged volumes. The titles I could make out consisted of ancient-seeming words that I had no way of interpreting, and most of the books seemed to be written in exotic foreign scripts. I pulled out the closest one, and holding the weighty tome with both hands, I opened it, not looking for anything in particular. Strange symbols, the likes of which I'd never seen before, crawled and danced across the pages, as if they were alive. What was this? I squinted, looked sideways, tried bringing the paper closer to my face, but I just couldn't seem to make the words sit still enough to make them out. I turned to another page on the off chance there'd be something useful, but all I found was a chaotic dance of the same old symbols, and looking at them made my head hurt. Hey, what do you think this is? Huh? Kid came over to my side and peered at the book. That right there's what happens when you put a cipher spell on something. Ain't gonna make a bloody word out with that in place. Too bad, eh? Kid looked up and flashed me an almost conciliatory grin. You probably don't want to know what's in there anyhow. These all look like pretty nasty spellbooks to me. Wouldn't be surprised if the whole lot of them were cursed. Which means you probably want to be careful. Never know what might come flying out. The moment the word came out of her mouth, I heard dark whispers and what sounded like a distant screech coming from inside the one I was holding. I slammed it shut and shoved it back into its place on the shelf. Magil, meanwhile, was looking thoughtfully at another bookshelf. He reached out for a leather-bound tome. Could this be? What you found, Mage? Anything familiar? Kid looked over. Her curiosity piqued. An ancient grimoire known as the Book of the Dead. Oh no, don't read it! Who would have thought I would encounter it here? He stared intently at the decaying old cover. In order to get this ending, you want to say, why not take a look inside? My curiosity got the better of me despite Kid's earlier warning. Let's take a look inside, could be interesting. He seemed to hesitate for a moment before nodding silently and turning to the first page. I could have sworn I heard a clunk followed by the sound of whirring cogs. The wheels of fate had been set in motion. I looked at the page Magil had opened the book to. It was bare. Hold up, is this whole thing blank? Kid sounded almost disappointed. Magil turned to another page, then another. Each was as empty as the last. Talk about a left down. What do you say we fill it in with a few choice words of our own, boys? Before we could stop her, Kid had grabbed a pen. Lynx is a bloody bastard and we'll be doing the world a favor when we get him. That'll do. You sure? I could go on. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. It wasn't a loud knock, but in the bottomless silence of the night, it might as well have been a thunderclap. Kid and I stood bolt upright and turned towards it. Magil, meanwhile, hid in the shadows, drifting away like smoke. Panicked, I whispered to Kid, "All right, let's go ahead and hide under the desk." Hide under the desk. You what? There is no time. I shoved Kid under the desk, then darted under it with her. Ooh, it was more cramped than I thought it would be. I packed myself in as best as I could, but Kid and I found ourselves in an awkward tangle of legs and arms. Slowly, the door opened. Flickering candlelight spread from the doorway with a warm glow. A shadowy figure appeared at the threshold. I tried to pack myself into the space under the desk just a little tighter and stilled my breath. I looked down for a moment and my heart skipped a beat. Kid's lips were right there. For a moment, everything else seemed to drift away. The pink bow of her mouth was so soft, so perfectly formed. Suddenly, my heart was beating so loud I thought my chest would burst. I tore my eyes away and squeezed them tightly shut. But it seemed that whoever it was didn't mean to come in, they simply stood there. Strange, I thought I heard something, but the lord of the manor is away, of course. Why would there be anyone in here? I have to get over my nerves. Everything was fine until we heard the news that Poor was on the move. The figure quietly closed the door, plunging the room back into darkness. The voice trailed off to a whisper. We remained motionless, keeping our ears pricked for any sign of unwelcome return. All we heard were footsteps moving away. As I stayed hidden, listening for trouble, a thought began to cross my mind. Kid sure does smell nice. Oi, Serge, you gonna move your arse or what? She pushed my chin upward and away from her as she spoke. Huh? Sorry. I rushed to my feet in a panic, smacking my head right into the top of the desk. Ow! Craning my head in my hands, I crawled out from underneath. Ooh, that stings. Kid followed right after and stood up, looking down at me on the floor. Not your most heroic moment. You alright? Yeah, I'll live. She took a look around the room. No sign of that dirtbag Lynx. Lucky for him, she snorted. So Poor has made its move. Magil emerged from the shadows, contemplating the news we'd overheard. Kid, if the rumors are true, we might well be about to find ourselves in a very difficult situation. This seemed to set her thinking too. Poor was a powerful nation that ruled the southern continent. I'd heard it was a prosperous land whose recent and sudden development had pushed it far ahead of its neighbors, which made me wonder, what would its inhabitants want here out in the sticks? They couldn't be after the frozen flame too, could they? As valuable as it might be, a jewel was just a jewel in the grand scheme of things. I couldn't imagine it being an item of national interest. I mean, ultimately it was just a pretty rock, right? Let them do what they want. If everyone's busy playing soldiers, they won't be bothering us. Come on, we've got things to do. She headed for the door. We left the room and made our way back down the side passage. All right, so now that we're back in the side passage, we want to go ahead and we want to head. We don't want to go down the stairs and we don't want to go towards the terrace. We want to go down the left branch. We continued onward past where the stairs and the side passage emerged into the main corridor. We found ourselves in front of some ornate double doors. Kid gently pushed the heavy doors open and peeked inside. All right, we're going in. She stepped into the main hall. Dozens of flickering candles gave the room an eerie glow. Huge roses adorned the walls and the floor was decorated with a beautiful floral pattern. What the hell? We found something else to add to the spectacle, a gathering of well-dressed ladies and gentlemen dancing in waltz in perfect silence. Our jaws dropped and the doors swung slowly shut with a creak behind us. We tried them, but they wouldn't budge. We were locked in. Oi, what the hell's going on here? Yelled Kid, raising her fist at a maid who happened to be passing by. Magil pushed her hand back to her side. They're ghosts. He pointed to the maid's feet, and I realized I could see the floor through them. The dancing gentry, the simpering ladies, all of them were little but wisps from the knees down. Ghosts? Suddenly, everyone turned to face us. And just as quickly, the spirits looked heavenward and vanished, silent screams contorting their ethereal features. Oh ho ho, I do hope you enjoyed our little dance. The girlish giggle echoed around the room. Kid looked at the crystal chandelier above us. Who's up there? Get down here now. As soon as she said it, the figure of a young woman came floating to the floor. And who do you think you are? Kid glared suspiciously at the mysterious stranger. I am Lilith, goddess of death. Lynx brought me here. When I came, I claimed the body of this girl, Riddell, as my corporeal vessel. Oh yeah? And what's a goddess of death doing giving us the time of day, eh? I came to thank you. It was you who freed me from Lynx's grasp, after all. Was it not you who inscribed his name in the Book of Souls? Lilith looked Kid dead in the eye. Wait, you mean that Book of Death thingy Mage found? Lilith didn't answer. She just kept staring straight at Kid. The room suddenly felt terribly cold. It is my duty to freeze the souls of those whose names are inscribed therein. Lilith reached into her robes and produced a crimson jewel. Witness my latest masterwork. The frozen flame! Kid and I both exclaimed in unison. One of many, Lynx's instinct certainly cannot be faulted. Of all the souls which to imbue the gem, truly his was the one. Its luster, its hue, it is truly beautiful. A beauty, ironically, such a Philistine as he could not hope to appreciate. Her eyes narrowed as she admired the stone, and a dark haze began to manifest in her right hand. It quickly took form, shaping itself into a great scythe. And then in an instant, its crescent blade had flashed through the darkness. And the frozen flame had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Thus end the cruel machinations that imprisoned me here in the body of Riddell. Lynx is dead, his soul is no more. Crushing the shards of the frozen flame underfoot, she raised her left hand. Another black haze began to coalesce, this time taking the form of a book. The Book of the Dead! Lilith turned and handed it to Kid, her expression as cold as ice. Write another name. Choose another soul for me to harvest. Things were getting seriously out of hand. What was I going to do? I'm going to refuse on Kid's behalf. I couldn't stay silent. We're not cold-blooded killers, I yelled. Shut up, Serge. She wasn't talking to you, said Kid, yanking hard on my ear. Think about it. Think about what we could do with an actual goddess of death on our side. I guess it shouldn't have surprised me that she'd actually consider such a thing. Typical Kid. And then the scythe was slicing through the air, coming down right between Kid and me. Oi, you looking for a fight? Kid reached for her knife. I do not intend to force you to choose a name, and do not misunderstand me. I simply wish to repay you for freeing me. She floated back up into the air. I am a harvester of souls. I do not take sides. I am no one's to command. She was leaving, but can we really let her? Magil! Are we just gonna let this goddess of death do whatever she wants? I turned to Magil, but found myself talking to no one. He must have vanished at some point. I was suddenly very, very afraid. Lilith, meanwhile, had stopped mid-exit. Something was holding her back, something that had a vice-like grip on her ankle. A muscular arm had reached out from the darkness. Not so fast, Lady Lilith, you're coming with me. We must return to the realm of shadows. Magil stepped into the light, but something was off. He didn't sound like himself. Curse you, Shadow Hunter! Lilith's features twisted into a scowl as she looked down at him. The Order of Darkness must be sorely wanting of aid to call on one such as yourself. Did they really think you're capable of capturing me? It has been centuries now since you came to this world, my lady. Your powers will surely have waned. Huh, are you sure of that? Her scythe came down with blinding speed and sent Kid flying through the air. I made to run and help her, but the sight of her stopped me in my tracks. An ethereal light was pulsing from her chest. Well, Magil, if you don't hurry, your friend's soul will freeze. A vicious, self-satisfied grin slowly formed on Lilith's face. Hey, I'm the one that saved your sorry arse, remember? Roared Kid defiantly. My apologies, the situation has changed somewhat. Bloody charming, you backstabbing, hoity-toity old. The Kid's anger was wasted on Lilith, who was focused solely on her conflict with Magil. He launched a fire spell only for her to deftly evade it, leaving it hurtling towards us. The ball of flames was on collision course with Kid, but she rolled aside at the last moment, shouting at Magil that he was a cack-handed Drago who should watch where he bloody well aimed his bloody spells. He retorted that he had no need to worry about what happened to Kid now that he had found Lady Lilith, and that we would have to learn to look after ourselves. Kid was less than happy to hear this and flew into a rage. Another bloody backstabber can't trust anyone these days, and then she collapsed to the floor, clutching her chest. The light was now pouring from inside of her, and it seemed like her soul would fly out of her body at any moment. But she wasn't so easily overcome. She struggled back to her feet and looked me squarely in the eye. Can't even trust you, Serge. If I don't get out of this alive, I'm gonna haunt you good. You mark me bloody words. She could never just ask for help when she needed it. Magil and Lilith's battle had escalated even further. They zipped back and forth in front of me like two shadowy blurs. Steel clashed with fire as Lilith countered Magil's spells with her scythe. Sparks, embers, and gouts of flame flew left and right, threatening to rain down on Kid. I threw my body over hers in an attempt to protect her. Kid, are you okay? My jaw dropped when I opened my eyes to look at her. The glow emanating from her chest had become a brilliant light, which was quickly solidifying. A new frozen flame formed above her inert body, glowing with gleaming crimson. Everything went dark, and I tried to grab Kid's hand with what little strength I could muster. Behind me, a raging inferno blazed. It is time, you will return to the realm of shadows. Lilith's body was engulfed in the cacophony of flames. No, how could I fail? Framed by the fire's light, a shadow leapt from the charred remains of the body she had occupied. It was a shadow in the shape of a woman. It fell to the floor and lay there, motionless. Magil walked over, calmly lifted the silhouette from the floor, and stuffed it into his chest. I could hear a tear-choked voice coming from somewhere inside his body. Must I leave this world of light so soon for that place of darkness? Please, just for a moment, let me glimpse the dawn one last time. Forgive me, Lady Lilith, but our Lord has waited long enough already. No good will come of testing his patience further, replied Magil coldly. He moved back towards the shadows. Wait, you can't leave. You have to bring Kid back. I pulled at his arm before he could slip away. That task must fall to you. Only the warmth of your heart can thaw her soul. You must lay your heart bare. With that, he finally sank into the shadows and vanished. I held Kid's frozen soul tightly in my hands and thought over everything we'd been together. But the more I thought, the more I remembered all the horrible situations she's gotten me into. She was selfish, greedy, a constant troublemaker, and for all I knew, she didn't give a damn about me. But even so, I loved her. Before I knew it, I was crying. Suddenly, the palms of my hands felt hot. A fiery light erupted from within the jewel. And then the frozen flame thawed. The fire flickered, exploding into a rainbow of light, and melted back into Kid's body. Her chest began to move gently up and down. She was breathing again. Kid! I only just had time to cry out her name before she threw me to the floor. What the hell are you doing, you bloody pervert? Get your filthy hands off of me. Thank the gods you're alive. Thought you could cop a feel I was out, did ya? She was back. After Magil returned to the realm of shadows, we never saw or heard from him again. Having lost such a perfect partner in crime, Kid soon washed her hands of the thieving business. When she did, she told me she decided to try being a normal girl. I didn't believe her, of course. But I was wrong. When I next came home from plying my troubadouring trade, she was there waiting for me, and she was beautiful. I was completely lost for words. My travels resumed the next day, but I did not intend to wander far, because she promised to give me a reply to the question I had asked her once I returned. Oh, this time we just have Serge at the end. And we completed all the endings. Good job. I will see you guys in another Let's Play.